Hello and welcome to the Game Week 8 edition of the FPL School podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matthias, and with me today I have Kevin finally back as my co-host on the FPL School podcast. And there has been an international break this time around in Game Week before Game Week 8. And Kevin has also been on his own international break. He's been to Sri Lanka, and that's why he hasn't been available for the FPL School podcast the last few weeks. So for anyone that doesn't know what has been happening with you lately, Kevin, how was the trip in Sri Lanka and how are you doing now leading up to Game Week 8?
Yeah, Sri Lanka was a fantastic time getting to spend time with my grandmother, who I hadn't seen since pre-COVID. So just getting to spend some quality time with her and seeing my cousins, my aunts, and various uncles and stuff like that. Family time will never be something I'll ever take for granted. I was super happy about that. What I wasn't so happy about is remembering the fact that there's a huge time difference in terms of watching matches. So it was a bit of a logistic nightmare watching Barcelona in the Champions League. The final day before I flew back to London, Everton played at 10 p.m. and my flight was at 5 a.m. So not much sleep had before that game, and luckily we got a draw against Newcastle without
Mm-hmm.
Isak. So and Anthony Gordon missed the pen. So yeah, it was quite fun to see. But generally speaking, a bit annoyed because obviously with limited Wi-Fi and all this type of stuff, it wasn't as I couldn't be in the loop as much, and I couldn't do what those 70 odd teams did and copy FPL tips with his captaincy of Saka, because I would have maybe have considered it, but nah. Haaland got a bit unlucky in the game, and yeah, I mean it's crazy to think that they scored 3 goals and he did absolutely nothing against Fulham. So
Yeah.
yeah, a bit unlucky, but in terms of football, glad to be back in London. Glad that things are um, sort of back to normal. It's
Yeah.
as much as I
For
love
now.
being in island time and being in Sri Lanka and all this stuff, all this type of stuff. It's good to be back home too. I'm not taking anything for granted in
Yeah.
regards to life itself.
And to your credit, you've actually done pretty well as well in FPL. You're still leading in the internal league in the FPL School podcast world ahead of me and Kimo. We're going to go through both Kimo's team and your team, and we're actually going to go to your team first, as we usually do on this podcast. This past game week, you got 49 points. You did say you could have had Saka as captain, but you did have Salah as vice captain, so I guess you weren't that close. But anyways, Saka got you 16 points regardless. That's a huge thing anyway. Because yeah, he didn't look as promising the week before. Where I captained him and he got 3 points. And I didn't captain him this time around and he got 16 points. But anyways, you did 2 transfers. You can talk about that as well. I want to get to you. But you ended up with 49 points, which is decent score, I guess, this week. Not worse, not the best. But yeah, take me through your team and your thinking into this game week and the 2 transfers that you did as well, selling 2 Fulham players and the players that you brought in Van de Ven and McNeil.
The way I see it, gained a point, so I'm a genius. But no, I, I, I just, I just didn't really love Fulham's chances, even though they don't have the worst fixtures, as we will eventually get to see. But I just like Everton's fixtures going forward, and I also just liked what I saw of Spurs. You wrote the most Spursy thing in the world when we were chatting to each other during the game, where I think you said something like, "Damn, Spurs look legit," and they ended up throwing the game
You
after a
responded with
2-0.
like Spurs. They
The
look
the
legit like
most
Spurs.
that was the most Spursy thing I've seen in a long while, and yeah, I still back Spurs, and I think they have some nice fixtures, and I like Van
Yeah.
de Ven, just
Yeah.
generally speaking. So I felt, considering I don't want these certain players, and because of price drops and stuff like that, which did end up happening with Smith Rowe, um, I don't hate the transfers that I did, and I got really unlucky because McNeil gave Calvert-Lewin the best pass, and all Calvert-Lewin had to do was pick a side, and he did the classic thing of just shooting it straight at the keeper. It
Yeah.
was it was so destined for mega points, but unfortunately it didn't work out. But yeah, all in all, a bit disappointing that I didn't reach the 50 point mark. But generally speaking, I can't be too upset having Saka, which a lot of people forgo because they had to get Palmer in and stuff like that. Was quite ironic. So yeah, he still saved my week in that regards. Konate has been a sort of, even though I hate Liverpool, he's been pretty decent for
It's
me.
been
And
amazing.
Rico Lewis finally getting something, but then immediately conceding again, and
Yeah.
all this type of stuff. It was just a crazy game week. It says everything that Feist has one of the most points that I could have had in my team
Yeah.
on the bench, and yeah,
Yeah.
I
Even if
go
you look
ahead.
at the team of the week, it's very few people with a lot of like high scores. It's just like Saka with 16. We'll get to the manager of the week who had the best week in the FPL School Mini League eventually, but not that many popular players had super high scores. It's Saka basically, and then like Mikel Antonio actually got the most points in the game week with 18. Pickford got 15 from the penalty save and stuff, so he would have been a nice differential in goal if people went for him. But like mostly people got not that high of a score in terms of the most important players or most popular players. So yeah, I guess that makes sense in that regard. But yeah, you were saying something as I was rudely interrupting you.
No, just generally speaking, a lot of these sort of premium guys just didn't deliver, and
Yeah,
that's fair enough. I'm just happy that in regards to one of them, Saka, I had. So
yeah,
I really can't complain at the end of the day.
yeah. And you have a really interesting structure as well with 4 premiums basically in Salah, Haaland, Palmer, and Saka, which is very rare to see. That means that you can't have the likes of Solanke, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Watkins, which some people have had. You could have had Watkins rather than one of the other players, I guess, and Trent, if I didn't mention him already. But you have actually managed to get quite a successful score because you both had Palmer for his 25-point haul in game week 6, and then you also had Saka for his 16-point haul in game week 7. And I don't think there's that many managers that have been able to do that, unless they didn't have Haaland, obviously. But yeah, Haaland has blanked for the last 2 game weeks, but I don't think we should sound the alarm on him. What do you think about Haaland in general and what he's done the last 2 game weeks? Is it enough for you to be put off by him at any point this season, or do you still think you're going to go ahead with having Haaland, especially for the rest of the season?
People said that shit when he got 13, 17, and 17. So like, or 17, 17, 13. So like that the best player in the league in regards to goal scoring goes like a match or two without scoring. Like it will happen. It's just a bit unfortunate that it was at home to Fulham of all teams, but
Yeah,
like,
Fulham are pretty good
well,
defensively though this season.
yeah, yeah, and you said as much in the past. So, but look, Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton, a bunch of these kamikaze teams, and Spurs who play the craziest
Oh,
high line in the world. So for me, I think it's just stick. I think people are looking into too much because like it's always like this. Every time a big player blanks out, oh, we should get rid of him and all this type of crazy nonsense. And I think Holland for I triple captain the guy on a single game week, and it gave me dividends. Like I can't not show him the faith. Like it would
yeah,
take like several games of him blanking for me to do it, and I don't think he's gonna blank against Wolves. I certainly don't think he'll blank against Southampton. And yeah, I mean, I understand it's a hefty price to pay, but it's still looking good.
yeah. I think the good thing about Haaland as well and his viability going forward is the next few game weeks, you're obviously going to want to have him. Wolves away, like you said. Southampton at home, like the next 2 fixtures are just absolutely amazing. If he blanks in both of those games, then sure, I probably would sell him before Bournemouth away, Brighton away, and then Spurs and Liverpool. But yeah, we have a couple of like easy matches now where he can get back into the groove of things and prove again that he is worth the price of admission, basically. So yeah, I don't really have any doubts about Haaland, especially the next few game weeks. And you'll see my wildcard draft as well. at the end of this podcast. And I still have him ranked as one of the most important players to have, actually the most important player to have currently in FPL. So yeah, no worries with Haaland there. But when it comes to the rest of your team with Saka, Palmer, and Salah as well, you don't really have much leeway when it comes to the rest of your squad. A lot of your players are like bargain bin players. What is your thinking with these 3 guys as well? Salah, Palmer, and Saka. Palmer, obviously, has been definitely worth the price so far. You could say the same for Salah and Saka as well, but I don't think you're going to have the same team going forward into the season. Or would that potentially be a thing you could do? Or what is your thoughts, especially with Salah and Saka going forward in general?
It's going to be one of those hard ones to gauge. Like, if I kind of want to see how Arne Slot and Arteta can handle these next couple of matches, because of course they play each other and Arsenal don't have the best games. Like, you could argue that Newcastle away isn't difficult, but I feel like it is, and I feel that Chelsea Arsenal can go either way. It's either like a dominant Arsenal win or it's a dominant Chelsea win. It's usually, unless it was like last year where it randomly ended up a draw. I don't love that, but 12 to even 22, like the next 10 game weeks looks sick. So I still like the look of Saka. Salah is still that guy. I have a feeling he's going to score against both Chelsea and Arsenal. And yeah, like I think I'm going to stick with those 2. My biggest question mark, which is really stupid because I should never doubt him because he delivers the goods, man. 25 points. Like I should never doubt him. It might be Palmer, dude. Like
Okay.
that's the one who might, like, it all depends because I hate Maresca now. Like, I hate Maresca more than life
Why?
itself.
Because
He doesn't play exactly. That is exactly why I don't like him. So
plays Palmer there instead, and we saw from Leicester last season that Dewsbury Hall was amazing in that position. So
yes, but it's just a question of how they can handle the sort of big games. Like, they've barely played any of the big teams besides City, in which they immediately lost. So, like, I'm a bit scared of how they're going to handle it. And I think that's an easy way to get Mbeumo. But what could I fix otherwise? It all depends. Because, like, the thing about, like, downgrading either Salah, Palmer, or Saka is that I can fix everything else. So one of them is definitely on the chopping block, but I kind of like having all of them so far because so far it feels like I have a 1 in 4 chance that someone's going to do something, and as long as I have that, everything will be fine.
Yeah, and you've done really well so far as well. Like, you're top 300k, where are you just about?
270 currently.
Yeah, 270k. Like, yeah, you're doing really well so far. So there's really no reason to worry or panic that quickly. But yeah, for me, I think I'm personally going to do Saka to Palmer next game week in game week 9. So yeah, for me, I would definitely have Palmer ahead of Saka in the pecking order. But I guess we could disagree on that and look at what's happening the next few game weeks. But I think, like you said, the game now between Chelsea and Liverpool, Maresca versus Slot, 2 new managers for 2 big teams. It's going to tell us a lot about those 2 teams in terms of how good they are against the better teams in the league, basically. So I think that's going to be a very telling match. And I think for now, you can just keep all 4 because obviously Saka has Bournemouth as well, which is a decent match for him. So yeah, I think you're in a really good position. And yeah, you had a decent game week. Could have been better, but at the same time, you're doing really well so far. So far, so good for you. Let's move on to Kimo, who's also had a pretty good season so far. He hasn't used a single chip yet. Should be mentioned with you. You have used both your wildcard and your triple captaincy chip. Kimo has used neither. He still has every chip available. He ended with 44 points last game week, which wasn't the best, I guess. But yeah, he didn't have Saka, so that's the main reason for that, basically. And he doesn't have Palmer either, so that's therefore you can see like someone with a completely different team for you, who has Mbeumo and Watkins instead out of those pricey players, and Trent, to be honest, or to be fair. But yeah, Trent and Mbeumo got 8 points for him. Digne also with 8 points, which is interesting. Digne is a player that you have talked about previously in the season as someone you would potentially consider. And so far so good. Like, he's playing 60 minutes plus basically every match for Aston Villa. So And he even gets subbed off like after the 60th minute mark as well, which I think is a plus because that gives you a better chance of getting a clean sheet, which is the most important thing when it comes to bonus points this season. So yeah, I think Kimo's team is looking decent, especially considering he hasn't used the wildcard or anything like that. You can see that by him having Barco on the bench still and Cresswell on the bench. But yeah, what do you think about Kimo's team going forward? Any weak points? Anything you'd like to change immediately with it?
I think it's just a question of has the Semenyo well run dry, and also maybe potentially shifting Jamie Vardy into a Raul Jimenez and then maybe making Smith Rowe into someone else, or combining the two of Semenyo and Smith Rowe into a Brendan Johnson, for example. But I feel like Johnson trade is going to be, well, that's a bit of a crazy sentence, but Brendan Johnson, the thing about him is that he's been so streaky lately. Are you going to be part of the time when the streak ends, or are you going to be part of the streak that continues? Because it's been a crazy run. I mean, he's up there with Kane in terms of goals scored per game. So good luck to him. I would love to see if he can reach the Jamie Vardy double digits and Ruud van Nistelrooy sort of numbers. But yeah, I think Spurs have really good matches too. So it's just a question of whether he's going to fix that aspect of things. But I like his team. I like that he has Mbeumo. Of course, the Egyptian loses all of his powers when the Egyptian guy finally gets him. How long has he had Salah now? Did he have him in the other game as well?
Since game week 5, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so he's had some Salah falls. Fair enough. Well, then I'll give it to him.
I'll double check actually.
I just want to quickly check his.
Yeah, game week 5, he brought in Salah. Salah got 6 points. He captained him. Got him 12 points. Game week 6, he had Salah 10 points. So yeah, 6 points, 10 points, and then 3 points now. So he's gotten decent return from him. But he also, in game week 5, sold Palmer to get Salah, and we know what happened with Palmer in game week 6 with the 25 points. So yeah, not the best in terms of the transfer so far for Kimo, but he's still done pretty well, especially considering he hasn't used any chips or anything like that either. When it comes to the team, like you said, Semenyo, I think it's time to move on if you don't have anyone ready to come in. But I think Smith Rowe against Aston Villa is more than good enough to come in. But we'll look at Kimo's plans for next game week in general. When it comes to the wildcard, I think game week 12 is sticking out like the best point to do a wildcard. I think that's when Spurs have their really good run goal, or that's when their run ends. And that's also when Arsenal are looking really good again, where Chelsea is a potential double up with Palmer and Nicholas Jackson and stuff. So I think that's probably the best window to wildcard in, and I think that's the case for most people that have a wildcard still as well. They're looking at that game week 12, and I think that's probably the right course of action as well. So yeah, in general, I think the team is pretty good. He has, like I said with you have Palmer and Saka, and that means you can't have the likes of Trent and Mbeumo and Watkins. That's someone that Kimo has. Watkins is someone that is potentially someone you could sell. Aston Villa have so many matches, especially going into Christmas with Champions League, all the cups, all the league games and stuff. We know John Duran is really, really good. He's going to play sometimes as a striker there for Aston Villa. Watkins will have to rest sometimes. So I think Watkins is kind of like a player you can downgrade. He's also someone that's worth like 9.0, so you get a lot of money for him as well. And I think there's quite a few standout striker options as well. Saying that as someone that has Watkins himself, and I'm looking to potentially get rid of him now playing against Fulham next game week. But yeah, Kimo's having a good team. He made 0 transfers as well, so he has a couple of transfers. I think he has 2 transfers, free transfers to use, and all the chips, which is looking pretty decent, even though we know the triple captaincy chip that you used was really well used because you got 17 points times 3 from Haaland there. Yeah, we'll get to Haaland and potential triple captaincy as well later on in the podcast. Let's move on to the manager of the week. And like I usually say in these segments, if you want to be the manager of the week, you guys watching, you can join the FPL Scope Mini League with the league code hpxeri. And if you get the highest point total in a single particular game week, you'll get featured on the podcast, just like Colonel Atom King has done. Someone from Cameroon, which is really nice to see. Always fun to see people from Africa and Asia all over the world joining the FPL Scope Mini League. Really cool in general. And obviously, the big thing with this team and the reason why it's the manager of the week is because it has Saka as captain, 32 points. Absolutely amazing. Obviously, it doesn't have Haaland, which is a big thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to the future of this team. Yeah, some nice scores from Welbeck, Havertz, Jota as well. Played really well. Trent Alexander-Arnold was amazing, but mostly it's down to Saka just being a really, really good player. Yeah, he provided the goods basically for this manager. So 87 points, has already used the wildcard in Game Week 4, so that's one of the drawbacks, I guess. But yeah, Palmer, Saka, no Salah, no Haaland. That's the interesting thing with this team. So what do you reckon with this team? Anything that sticks out to you? Obviously, the Salah Haaland aspect would be the one thing sticking out. But yeah, what do you think of this team going forward and the players that it has in the team at least?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, pretty good team, very different, and Welbeck is a bit of an inspired choice.
Yeah, he's been really good so far, though.
Yeah, of course. I mean, um, he's one of those sort of Raul Jimenez types that's just it shouldn't really be playing over Muniz or Juan Pedro, but obviously in Juan Pedro's case, he's injured. Or in my thing, why is Evan Ferguson? Is he still injured? Why
No,
is Evan Ferguson just not playing over Daddy Welbeck? Behave. Welbeck keeps.
Welbeck has been better than him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, he has what, like 4 goals so far. So
Yeah.
4 goals in 7 is pretty good. So yeah, Daddy Welbeck is showing his experience and is a bit of an inspired pick, as I said again. From what I can see from his team, it's just a really good spread. He's covering Salah with TAA and Jota, and I like the Havertz pick as well. It's just a question of long term what he's gonna want to change, because there are some changes that I think he could do, and I know we'll go into a little bit later, but it's very Arsenal reliant, and they got some very difficult matches because a triple up is wild, and this is classic Arsenal, man. They constantly keep losing the clean sheets in the most random teams and fixtures. So
but then they also keep clean sheets against the most tough opponents as well.
I know it's so inconsistent with them. It's either you're either gonna get a 15-pointer from Gabriel or like -1. So it's always so strange with them. But I like his team. I like that it's a little bit different. But I think obviously as someone who's had Haaland and Salah this entire time, that's gonna bite him in the end.
Yeah, I think that's going to be tough for him as well. And also, the money is quite spread around. You can see 2 goalkeepers here. Onana, who's like 5.0, Flecken 4.5. It's pretty expensive. The bench players in general, Mazraoui 4.5. It's not too expensive, but he doesn't have any like bench fodder types of players that you have, for example. Players that are just there for the bench. He has basically, once Joe Pedro is back from injury, which is going to be quite a while now, actually. I think he's out until like the next international break, in week 12 or something like that. But yeah, apart from him, he has basically 14 viable players that can play which game week, but you always have to bench 3 outfield players and 1 goalkeeper. So it is kind of money wasted in that sense, because yeah, you have more flexibility in terms of who you can play each and every week, but you'll also have to bench some really good players that cost a lot of money. So I think that's like the main drawback of this team personally. The money is just too evenly spread out, sort of, so you don't have the likes of Salah and Haaland to combat that, I guess. So yeah, that's going to be a tough thing to settle, but we'll get into that. Get into it when it comes to the manager of the week plans as well at the end of the podcast. But yeah, you did mention the fixtures going forward, Arsenal fixtures in particular. So let's go to the fixture ticker, and we can actually start there with Arsenal fixtures. You can see now at the bottom or near the bottom of the fixture ticker, we have the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, 3 teams with a lot of players that are popular in FPL. So out of these 3 teams, especially, we can actually start with Arsenal. Obviously, they had Southampton and Leicester in the last 2 games. That's why a lot of people have Arsenal players, because they had 2 really, really good fixtures. But now they get a lot of tough fixtures. And we know Arsenal are... Actually, I think they are the odds favorite to win the title now because of how City have looked lately. So they are one of the best teams in the league. But what do you make of Arsenal going forward now? The likes of Saka, Havertz, Saliba, Gabriel. Any of those players that are still like super interesting to you, or do you think like mostly they sort of have to be chucked out now, or because you said from game week 12 onwards they're going to have pretty good fixtures. What do you reckon with Arsenal assets in general?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. If you've like heavily invested in them, it's just a question of who you'd want to keep. I think Saka has to be one of those that you keep because he's a penalty taker. He has proven this entire what one besides one game where he blanked. So
Yeah,
yeah, and even against City, what was it? He got an assist before he had to get subbed off in the half. So Saka to me has looked like you gotta keep him, and he's been proving it in the Champions League as well. Um, Very lucky free kick against PSG, but yeah, I just think that Saka has proven that he deserves to stay in the team. It's just now a question of whether maybe you want to shift away to a different defense for a little bit because they do have some nightmarish matches in terms of like Bournemouth away. They could keep a clean sheet there. Liverpool, nah. Newcastle, probably not. Chelsea, probably not. Nottingham Forest, probably not. Hudson Odoi is hell bent on scoring, and Chris Wood is Woodinho. So yeah. West Ham, Jared Bowen, man, he's still a scary. Kudus, no, Kudus is that guy though. So like, I just don't love their prospects defensively. So offensively, I think if you still got stock, go with it. I think Havertz has been a really fun pick, and kudos to everyone who's either stuck it out with him or still have him. I think he's been, you know, yeah, he's been like he sort of like scores every other game sort of thing. So it's fun to see. It's, what was it? Yeah, goal and assist, then nothing, then goal, then nothing, nothing, goal, goal. Yeah. He doesn't really explode for points, but
yeah,
he consistently gets points. So I think if you have average still, you might as well keep him for these fixtures. But Saka for me, definite hold. The rest, I'd say, is a bit more difficult. If Martin Odegaard was back, I would have been a bit more higher up on Arsenal's chances with a lot of things because the boy can dictate a match by himself. But yeah, I think without him, Arsenal are going to struggle a little bit in retaining ball and all this type of stuff. So unfortunately, yeah. But Saka has proven that he's fixture proof. So
has he though?
that's I yes.
Has he scored that many goals in big games?
I mean, he tends to. So, I mean, I personally, that's where things went south for me last year when I got rid of him
In
in
tough
hopes
matches,
that
yeah.
in the tough matches, and then he'd just randomly score a pen or get an assist here or cut from the right into the left. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think his form as of late dictates that he should still be in the team.
Yeah. I mean,
Come on,
that
dude.
is
He's
fair enough.
only
He's a really good player, and he's also like developing each and every year as well. So even if I think he had a decent record against big teams last season, but even if he doesn't have like the best record against big teams last season, that could change for this season as well because he is just a better player. Arsenal are a better team. So yeah, I think he is still a really good asset. But yeah, like I said, I'm probably looking to sell him in Game Week 9 myself because I sort of completely disagree with you when it comes to Arsenal. I think defensively, against the bigger teams and away from home, we've seen Arsenal sort of just lock down defensively and try to shut up shop and then score from a set piece or something like that to win matches. We saw that against Spurs earlier this season when they beat them 1-0, for example. Saw them do really well in a half with 10 men against Man City where they played really defensively. So I think actually like I'm more enamored by defensive assets and keeping them rather than keeping offensive assets that are quite expensive. So for me, it's kind of the opposite. But I get your point with the fixtures that they have. There are a lot of teams that are going to be difficult to defend against. Liverpool, obviously, which is a really, really good team. Bournemouth have been really good offensively in most matches this season. They should have beaten Liverpool or Chelsea probably this season, even though they lost that game and didn't score. Newcastle with Isak, that's always tough at St. James's Park. Chelsea have been amazing offensively this season, so that's a really tough match as well. So I get it from a fixtures perspective, but I also just rate Arsenal's defense that highly, and I think they will sort of bunker down in these tougher matches. So yeah, for me, I think Arsenal is a team that I would probably stay away from in general. If I was looking to buy people, if I had Saka, or I do have Saka and Havertz myself, and Gabriel, and I'm probably looking to sell one of the attackers and just have one attacker, one defender, just because I really like Arsenal in general. But yeah, it is tough with these tougher fixtures to predict what's going to happen. But yeah, for me, I think, especially Gabriel, who has that goal threat as well, I think he's a keep. Saliba, for example, he's someone that's more dependent on clean sheets. I don't think he would be the best pick, but Gabriel is someone that I would probably stick with, or I am going to stick with myself with my own team. But yeah, when it comes to Chelsea and Liverpool, they also have tough matches. Obviously, the first one against each other as well. And they also, you can see Chelsea and Arsenal play there. On top of that, Liverpool also have Man City eventually, among other pretty tough matches. But out of Chelsea and Liverpool, which team do you think looks the best, or like what do you expect from the game actually between Chelsea and Liverpool that's coming up now in Game Week 8? Do you think Chelsea will prove to be among the big boys this season, or do you think Liverpool are just that strong under Arne Slot? Like, what do you reckon from that match?
I think Mariska's a loser, but yeah, no, but I just think that had it been Chelsea Liverpool, it might have been a different game, because it's Liverpool Chelsea, and considering the fact that Liverpool have basically had some, what's it, not last week, was it? When was that game?
Which game?
It was. It wasn't last week. It was the week before. No, how long ago was that game?
Which game?
Sorry, Liverpool Forest.
Game Week 4, so that's a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
5
Like
weeks ago.
since that, no, like since then they've clearly just gotten things going again. Especially if you look in the Champions League and stuff too. So I think Arne Slot is sorry to Chelsea fans, but I think he's going to bury them at home. And I think Salah tends to always bring out something special, like all former Chelsea players do against Chelsea. They always bring out something special just to
Yeah.
show the middle finger to them. So I personally don't. I don't think Liverpool will keep a clean sheet, because I feel like Chelsea are good enough to score against them. But I think Liverpool are gonna get like a 2 or 3-1 win.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's also like the reasonable thing to think as well, considering how good they've looked so far this season. But yeah, very interested to see Chelsea, especially. I think Liverpool are legit. I think that's without question. I think Chelsea are a lot better than they were last season, but I'm not quite sure if they are that level just now either. We've only seen them in a tough match basically so far in the opening game week against Man City. And I think the opening game week is always sort of tough to gauge, because obviously Man United looked way better than Fulham in game week 1, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it's sort of a feeling out process the first few game weeks, where you don't really know where the team is at. You don't really know the psyche of each team. So it's kind of tough to read anything from that game between Chelsea and Man City either. But in that game, Chelsea actually were okay. If Nicholas Jackson was a bit more turned on that game, in terms of scoring goals, he would have probably scored a couple goals there. And he looks a lot better now as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting from a Chelsea's perspective, especially, I think. But also Liverpool, they haven't really had any big tests so far. Let's see if their defense is actually as legit as it seems this season. Because last season, we know that wasn't the case. They looked really porous defensively. So that's going to be an interesting game with Chelsea's super duper good attack. As you can see from the expected numbers here as well, Chelsea have the second best expected goals the last 6 game weeks with 13.64, which is absolutely amazing. That's why Palmer and Jackson are viable picks still. And Kunku would have been a viable pick, of course, if Maresca wasn't such an asshole, like I said. So yeah, Chelsea are really good offensively, and that's going to be interesting to see how Liverpool handle that in general. The best team for expected goals is actually Spurs, which is also very interesting because they have really good matches, as you've said. We've touched upon Johnson, at least, early on. But what do you think about Solanke? A lot of people were kind of disappointed with him last game week against Brighton. He sort of looked more like the typical Kane sort of thing, where he plays as like a attacking midfielder, sort of more facilitating rather than being like the out-and-out striker. Does that put you off Solanke as a potential pick, or do you think he's still an amazing player, or potentially amazing player to have in these fixtures for Spurs?
No, I think Solanke's. I understand people's frustrations and stuff like that, but I think it was just a bit of a miscalculation because people have to remember he still got an assist in this
Yeah,
game,
really
and
nice assist as well.
yeah, and that's the thing about Solanke so far in this season. He hasn't really exploded. It's always been a consistent six,
Yeah,
5, 6, and if he continues doing that, he'll be a good pick. So
yeah.
I think he'll definitely get more of a chance. And is there any prognosis on what's going on with Son? He's out for a while, isn't he?
He has been out, but I think he's potentially getting back now into fitness. But I'm not sure. I'm not quite updated on Son in general. But for me, Son is not really that interesting in general. I think Brennan Johnson is sort of not the same. Obviously, Son is a better player, but for a much cheaper price, I think he can offer quite a bit of the same. Sort of what we said about Palmer versus Nkunku, I guess, at the start of the season, which proved to be wrong. But in Johnson's defense, he has more playing time than Nkunku. So yeah, I think Johnson sort of covers Son, but yeah. Apparently he has 25% chance of playing hamstring injury is what it says on the FPL thing. So yeah, he might be out. What do you think of that? Is that in regards to penalties for Solanke? What are you thinking about Son? Was it his viability? Is it Spurs in general?
Hmm. I mean, look, if you just look at their games and stuff like that, just generally speaking, West Ham Spurs is usually a goal fest, if I remember correctly. I feel like it's usually that both teams end up scoring it. It's quite a fun match.
You remember the 3-3 match with Lanzini scoring the
Yeah,
final
of
goal?
course, of course.
Obviously.
And I am also looking that
It's usually a
they
very
have a
it's usually a very open match between Spurs and West Ham. Sometimes West Ham win, sometimes Spurs win quite decisively, and we had the 3-3 match as well. So it's a pretty open game. Like it's a very fun game usually as well, and
yeah,
with a lot of goals, like you said, mostly.
yeah. And I think it's 4 home games in the next 6 as well, which is
Yeah,
always beneficial. So I don't hate people going, what? Dominic Solanke Mitchell? When
yeah,
has that always been his name?
yeah.
What? Okay.
He married Tyreek Mitchell,
So
so
okay, cool. I don't know.
Tyreek
So
Mitchell, the first gay
no,
couple.
Tyreek no. Oh, sorry, I thought you said he got married to someone and changed his name to
No,
Mitchell. So
I,
I was
I
like,
don't think
oh,
so. I don't think so. I was just joking about him and Tyreek Mitchell.
okay. But I've completely lost my train of thought. No, but 4 home games.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Yeah.
No, of course not.
Seinfeld
Four.
reference.
God damn it, Matthias. 4
It's a
home
Seinfeld
games.
reference. Stop it.
I know, I know. So, 4 home games. Johnson on fire. Solanke will join in on the fun, and it all depends. Like I personally, I even like the looks of Kulusevski.
Yeah, he's looked really good in general for Sweden as well. Like, I
Yeah,
guess you've seen Sweden, seeing as you're wearing a Sweden shirt.
yeah, yeah,
He's in the form of his life, it seems like, and he's a really good
yeah,
player. We've always rated him as well.
yeah.
So yeah, as a Swede, Kulusevski, you did mention him now. What do you
Yeah.
reckon with him?
I I think under this new sort of way that he wants to play Kulusevski more as like a sort of in and not an inverted winger, but like he sort of plays like a cam
Yeah,
and like their facilitator, which has looked good. I think Maddison has looked like a fun little. He's a bit of a troll though. The my issue with Maddison is his price, but
yeah,
we know that he's capable of more than what he's done so far. But even what he's done so far in sort of trying to get back into pace, it's still 2 goals and 3 assists, and I think these are the sort of matches where he can get back. So I think Spurs are a lot better assets than we give them credit for.
yeah,
I might be a bit crazy expecting that they're going to keep a lot of clean sheets when they really don't. But when they do, Um, no, they don't really keep clean sheets. Why the hell did I
No.
pick them? Van de Ven.
I mean, good
But
matches. Van de Ven has 2 assists so far, which are really nice assists
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah. And
So,
he's gonna score
and
against
he's
West.
4.5. It's really cheap, so it's not really like it's not that many
No.
options. That's something I was gonna ask you about earlier. Actually, like if you were considering Aitnori or Mikolenko, for example. Mikolenko's injured, so I guess that's will put you off. But were you considering Mikolenko
Yeah,
before?
I did.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he would have 100% kept the clean sheet because he would have played and
yeah,
probably would have won. No, but I, I like Everton's matches going forward, so I would have had Mikolenko, and also because it's the perfect crime because he's gone down in price and
yeah,
stuff like that. So the minute I hear he's ready, it's very likely that I'll bring him back.
yeah,
I really like Nuri. I think it's crazy that he gets to play as a defender, even though he's like left winger
yeah. Mostly.
at this point. Like he plays so offensively,
Yeah,
and he seems to just go crazy against the most random teams. But the thing about Wolves is they just keep losing, dude. And yes, I understand that they have had
really
some
tough
really,
matches.
really, really tough matches,
Yeah,
and things could look up, especially when they start playing the sort of from game week 9, Brighton, Palace, Southampton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich, Leicester. Like that's a good run of fixtures, and especially for a bunch of teams that play sort of kamikaze football as well. So yeah, it could be. I like the looks of all those players. To be fair, I like Aitnuri, I like Mikolenko.
mm,
So if I could afford them, I would get them. It's just that I've gone too crazy with the premiums. But out of the ones, who do I like the most? I'd say Mikolenko first because of his fixtures. But I think in terms of actual performance, I think Ainori is the more interesting one because
yeah,
he just doesn't seem to care. Like when you see him play, sometimes it looks so out of position. But unlike Rico Lewis, who doesn't have the margins with them, Ainori does, and it
yeah,
shows because even for the national team, Ainori, gets goals and assists as well. So yeah, man.
yeah,
What a Algerian wonder kid, man.
yeah. I think I know the thing with him as well is the next 2 fixtures are tough for Wolves defensively, obviously. Man City
Yeah.
is one of the worst fixtures, and Brighton away is also a really tough
Yeah.
fixture when it comes to keeping clean sheets. But after that, I think Ainuri is going to be absolutely fantastic as a pick, both in terms of potentially getting some clean sheets. Wolves have been pretty atrocious defensively so far. Again, somewhat down to the tough opposition that they had. But I think like the clean sheet potential on top of the really sky high attacking potential that Aitnori has, playing as bigly as a winger, I think that's going to be a really good sign from game week 10 onwards. And I think already now, if you want to have him and stash him on your bench and stuff as well, I think he's a really good pick. And he could always score in these random situations as well. He could probably be the one player to score and get the consolation goal when Man City beat them 4-1, for example. So you never really know with him. But just slightly to go back to the Spurs thing as well, because we mentioned the four guys there: Solanke, Brendan Johnson, Kulusevski, and Maddison. If you were to rank those 4 players, how would you rank them in terms of viability or people that you think are the best assets in FPL currently?
It sort of broke up when you listed the 4 players. Can you just list them again?
Yeah, Solanke, Maddison, Kulusevski, and Brendan Johnson for Spurs.
That's tough. Hmm.
I think all 4 are pretty good assets, to be honest. So
Yeah, I think all 4 are good. I'm fudge. Um, I'm going a little bit based on form.
mhm.
So Johnson probably
Yeah, okay.
number 1. Uh, Form wise, should I really say Solanke? Solanke, Kulusevski, Maddison, even
Yeah.
though Maddison's been ripping it up. I just think his price of 7.5 when
Yeah.
the other ones have similar price or less is what the defining factor. And also because Madison has also shown he goes like invisible in certain games. So,
Yeah.
but Johnson is currently, form of his life where he's just scoring for fun. I think Kulusevski, in terms of what I've seen from him, is just playing out of his skin, and I like what I see. And he's one of those sort of players that can turn up in sort of like bigger matches as well. So yeah, but my problem with Kulusevski is that he's very, very he either explodes or he's kept quiet sort of thing, but he's always playing.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of a little bit of consistency is why I put um, Solanke higher. But
Yeah.
the issue with Solanke then becomes the fact that he was so out of like never injured, goes to Spurs, gets injured straight away. But like in the time that he did play, goal, 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 assist in the last three. So that's why I put him
Yeah.
above Kulusevski. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I have the same top two and bottom two as you, but I think I just have them flipped around. Potentially, and maybe I have Johnson over Solanke. I actually have Johnson over Solanke in the wildcard draft, to be honest, but it's really close between those two guys. I think it's like neck and neck between those two guys. I also really like both Maddison and Kulusevski, but I think I'm going to have Maddison. Again, it's a money issue. Like, if you have extra money in the bank, if you know that you're not going to be in trouble with money, if you know you're going to be able to get all the transfers that you want to get done the next 4 or 5 game weeks with Maddison in the squad, then I think he's a really good asset. But again, it's down to the money. But I think he's going to get more points than Kulusevski at least for the next 4, 5, 6 game weeks. But whether those points will be enough to be worth the value, then that's a different question, I guess. But yeah, I quite like Maddison as well. I also like, in general, with those players like Maddison, who's sort of like the talisman for a team, sort of like a hub. But that's sort of also the case with Kulusevski lately, with his role. Those players are really good in those matches where Spurs are expected to be in charge of the game and they're not really just playing counter-attack football. They can actually have the possession most of the game. I think that suits those players as well. So that makes them really good and viable players as well. So it's really tough. I think it's pretty much a toss-up between all 4 guys, honestly, and I think all 4 guys are pretty good. So it just comes down to personal taste. Who do you like to watch play? Who do you have a gut feeling about? I don't think it's going to be a massive point difference between the 4, but I think it's just interesting discussion in general between those 4 guys. And yeah, I think we both agree that all 4 are pretty viable picks. We wouldn't really be against anyone bringing in any of those guys. Yeah. Pretty much.
100%.
The one final thing I want to discuss when it comes to the fixture ticker is the team that is second highest on it, which is Manchester United, because they have looked pretty shambolic so far this season. We know Ten Hag is under a lot of pressure. He might be sacked. Maybe that's what we're waiting for in terms of Man United assets as well. But is there any player at Man United that you would consider at this point, or is it still just too up in the air now with Ten Hag and you don't really know what the future holds and stuff? Like, what do you reckon with Man United assets in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's strange. I think like defensively, they've not done that bad. I mean, they've got 4 clean sheets and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
considering their run of matches, they can easily keep several and
Yeah.
all this type of stuff. But it's just,
Who do you trust to play
I,
there as well? Like, when Luke Shaw is back, that's a big if. What happens with the fullbacks? Like, who do you think plays out of the 3 fullbacks there?
I
Mazraoui, Dalot,
mean,
and Shaw.
the issue with what was it that Mazraoui's out for 2 months now because of the
Oh, yeah, that's
heart
true. He's
stuff.
actually out. I forgot about that.
Yeah, yeah. So
Ah,
he's
yeah.
out for 2 months due to the heart
Yeah, of course. Of course he
issues.
is. Yeah.
So that becomes a question of whether Malacia will actually get some
Oh,
playtime
yeah.
and
Him
Shaw,
as well.
because Shaw is. I think Shaw got. Didn't he like recently get re-injured or something?
He
Like it
might.
sounds
He
like
always does that as well, so that
uh,
wouldn't surprise me either.
King Burger King is
Yeah,
unreliable.
both Malasia and Shaw have orange flags, as it were.
Yeah, and I feel like
Obviously,
Dallow's
Mazraoui's
just
out.
playing like Dallow's the one I trust in there defensively because he's just gonna play right back or left back rest of the season from the looks of it, and it's just a
Len
question of sorry.
Lenny Oro is going to be back for game week 10, 11, just about as well, so that's interesting.
Yes,
Um, but yeah. He's 4.3.
Yeah. It's just a question of whether they trust who they trust.
I mean, I guess the
center
lot's going to be pretty secure then, but he's 5.1 as well. He's a bit of a premium asset in terms of for Man United defenders at least.
Yeah, it's strange because he keeps rotating. Like, I don't understand why De Ligt only got 45 minutes, and then Martinez didn't play, even though he's been playing almost every game, and so it's all a bit of a mess with the Ten Hag on the, you know, on the wheel. Or what's the thing they used to say for
Only at the wheel.
office at the wheel? Yeah. So it doesn't help that they've had so many random injuries like Mason Mount, Ugarte, Mainu, and even Garnacho. Had got a knock and all this type of stuff, and Casemiro has regressed 500 years, and it's all
He's
really
Brazilian.
messy. Yeah, it's all regressed massively for Man United. Like, Bruno Fernandes has been like one of the most unluckiest players. Like, he's had so many chances to score and go nuts, and I still believe that he can come good, and it feels like these are the sort of matches where he can. I also think that Rashford is not spoken about enough because he again has the ability and all this crap, but like, people forget he only has one goal so far. So it's I don't know if it's Ten Hag, I don't know if it's the players, but something's got to give. But I think this is where they can sort their lives out. And I think if I were to say any assets offensively, Bruno, Rash, Xerxes, and in terms of defense, I'd say like a Dallo and Onana, because Onana, you know for sure, is going to play every game. So, yeah. And he isn't actually doing too poorly in terms of saves. He's done all right.
Onana is the highest scoring goalkeeper so far this season.
Yeah. So, like, they have assets and it could look good. I just hate that compared to some of these other players who have entry points that are a lot easier and cheaper, these guys have some high prices, and that's the only thing that's putting me off. And look, Man United is Man United at the end of the day, so hopefully they can get things going. I mean, as someone who doesn't like them, I'm thriving and enjoying my life, but you know, I do recognize their talent in the players that they do have, and it's a bit shit to see players doing poorly. And a good friend in the channel, Remy, hates Bruno Fernandes, so I kind of want Bruno Fernandes to make him
eat his words.
Be quiet. Yeah.
I think Man United as well. It's like, in theory, they are really, really good, and I think they could potentially, like, they have to just unlock something in this team, whether that's firing Ten Hag, which I think they probably should do at this point, but they probably should have done that now, seeing as it was an international break. Seems like they're going to stick with him a little bit longer. I think if they had sacked Ten Hag, I would probably be more interested in one of their players, but I don't know. Dalot is actually an interesting player, especially seeing as Mazraoui is out. All the fullbacks are out, basically, apart from Dalot. I think he could be a good player, but again, probably like waiting out Game Week 8, Game Week 9, Game Week 10, and just see how they do. West Ham away is, yes, it's a light blue fixture. It should be pretty easy considering how bad West Ham have been so far, but West Ham are sort of turning a corner now, it seems like. Destroyed Ipswich. So I think that's a slightly tougher game. Brentford as well is no like super easy match either. Those two games could easily be grey on the fixture ticker as well. And then Chelsea obviously is a really tough match, but from Game Week 11 onwards, maybe Ten Hag is fired at that point. Maybe they're showing some signs of life under Ten Hag. I think that's probably the entry point for Man United. I don't think I would go for any Man United players before that. But if I had Dalot, for example, already, I would probably keep him, obviously, because they have good fixtures. But I would probably not buy any Man United players at this point. And Bruno Fernandes, he's always that elusive. Will he get back to his winning ways? Again, he's like an analytics darling, but he just doesn't provide the points, even though he has really good underlying numbers all the time. But yeah, I think it's just too early for Man United players still with how they've looked so far this season. But Game Week 11 onwards, could easily see myself getting a Man United player when they have those really, really good fixtures eventually. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the fixture ticker. Let's go into your current plans for this next upcoming game week. And you said that you're most likely just standing pat. you might do a transfer, you're looking into potentially some things to do. My suggested transfer is just in the case of Saka being out for some reason, he is yellow flagged, but we both expect him to start. But if it is confirmed or like rumored that he's going to be out this game week, I think Saka to Mbeumo, we just mentioned Man United, how they are porous defensively. No Masraoui now as well. That's going to hurt them defensively as well. Even though they've had clean sheets, they had a lot of clean sheets so far this season. They've also had matches where they looked absolutely terrible defensively. So I think Mbeumo still has a really good fixture in that game week against Man United at Old Trafford. And we see from Brentford as well, they have really, really good fixtures. So I think Mbeumo is like the clear player that you would want in your squad. So I'd probably do that considering Saka has tough fixtures from game week 9 onwards if he's out for this game week. But if he's playing now against Bournemouth, I think he's definitely a keep. I think he's going to start personally. So those are just my thoughts with your team. But it's your team. It's your decisions. You've thought about your team more than I have. So what is your thinking when it comes to your with your team? And yeah, I also want to know about the decision between Woodfouch and Konate as the potential starter as well. But yeah, let's hear about your team and your thoughts going into game week 8.
Yeah, so basically, my whole sort of decision making in terms of standing pat just boils down to the team doesn't look actually that bad, and a lot of fixtures are not the worst. So the only thing that I kind of hate is Flecken and Bergen. Um, they haven't been that rotation that everyone was expecting in regards to them. So, but I think generally speaking, goalkeepers haven't been
Yeah,
there haven't been a lot of clean sheets, just generally speaking. So, it's not the worst. Konate is simply because another thing that we haven't been mentioned until now is the fact that Allison's out and Kelleher is in goal, and
that's true.
he can be he can be super Iñaki Peña, Barcelona reference there. He can be really shaky, is what I meant to say.
Yeah, easy for you to say.
So it's it's just it's just a bit of a tough decision there. I also just believe that Chelsea can score in that game, and that's the only
Yeah,
reason why. Southampton have like a record low amount of goals scored, and obviously it's so typical if that's the game where they score and Konate gets a header and gets 10 points. So I'm a little bit shaky over
yeah.
which one I actually want to start. But
To be fair, you're also maximizing your points there because if he keeps a clean sheet, then Palmer doesn't get any points, and Palmer is kind of a differential for you. So you're hoping
yeah,
that Palmer will score in that game.
of course. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
So yeah, so generally speaking, I'm not too unhappy with the team. It's just that I really want Mbeumo. I had him last year and he did bits for me, and it's hurt not having him this entire season.
yeah. You did mention earlier that you're more likely to sell Palmer than Saka, most likely. That was before you sort of looked more into the Arsenal fixtures and seeing just how bad they actually are. But is that something you could potentially do, Palmer to Mbeumo, or do you think that's sort of sideways, seeing as Palmer will have Newcastle at home and Man United away the next 2 game weeks after that?
I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way where I can sell McNeil and Rogers and get it in Pueblo, which is impossible.
Yeah,
So
you can't.
I don't know. I genuinely I have no idea what I'm gonna actually do next in terms of that. But
Yeah,
what I could do potentially is, yeah, I guess getting rid of the Starboy and just getting it in Pueblo because that could really save me in terms of fixing other aspects on the pitch,
yeah,
potentially getting in yeah, potentially getting in a Solanke or a
yeah,
Brendan Johnson and all this type of stuff because I don't love some of Aston Villa's matches coming up and yeah, yeah, we'll see.
yeah,
But I think for now the best option for me is to stand pat.
yeah,
I'm completely unlucky with Ross Stewart. I feel so bad for him, to come back from such a long spell and then just re-injuring yourself. It's like, oh, unlucky.
yeah,
But in terms of the team, I kind of like it. I think the only thing that's letting me down currently is defensively. I don't have any big hitters
yeah,
in regards to that, and it'd be so pep if Rico Lewis doesn't play against Wolves anyway,
Uh,
so that I might get caught off. But I feel like Rico Lewis has now
yeah,
finally
what do you think of
cemented
that? And
himself.
yeah, what do you think about that in general? Rico Lewis's playing time going forward. Do you think he's going to be playing like 3 out of 4 games, pretty much, or
Yeah, I feel like Pep is always going to rotate his defense, but I feel like Rico Lewis, some assurances must have been given to Rico Lewis because he's playing a lot lately.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think Rico Lewis is that guy. So I'm more than happy with him, and I think there's going to be an Cancelo-esque match for him coming. So
Yeah,
because
no
he's
one owning him
really
if that's the case.
yeah. Yeah, because he's been really unlucky not having the margins with him or hitting the post or hitting the crossbar or some bullshit always going
Yeah.
against him. But generally speaking, I like the team, and it's just like Bogart and Stewart who are letting the team down a little bit. But I like the rest of the team, and yeah, but I think there's a reason why I picked these players, and these players have delivered in some sense. So I'm just gonna stand pat. But
Yeah.
I really want Mbeumo, so I'm
Mm.
really gonna struggle not getting it. Like I feel like if I stand pat, I'm 100% getting in Mbeumo next week.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably the best course of action as well. I think that's what I would recommend to you. When it comes to Rico Lewis, I mentioned in the weekly Wildcard draft video earlier this week as well that I think he's going to play more than people expect. We always expect City players to be rotation risks, but I sort of think back to what happened last season when Kevin De Bruyne got injured and Julian Alvarez played basically every single game for Man City after that. I think it's sort of the same with Lewis. It seems like whenever Rodri is out, Lewis plays a lot. That happened last season as well. When Rodri was out suspended, Lewis played most of those matches. I think like 4 out of 5 matches or something that Rodri missed out on last season, Lewis actually started in them. I think it's just one time where he was benched. So I think his playing time is actually pretty damn good going forward. But you did put some scary thoughts in my head when you mentioned Cancelo there, because so far having Lewis has felt a lot like owning Cancelo in the past. If you don't know my history with Cancelo, you obviously do, Kevin, but anyone listening, I used to have Cancelo and he used to drive me crazy because he sort of looked the way that Lewis has looked now, really close to getting points, but just kept conceding stupid goals, or the team kept conceding stupid goals, and he kept being like this close from getting assists and goals. And then remember I sold Cancelo, he just went gangbusters and got like 21 points against Southampton and just was amazing. So yeah, maybe Lewis is his replacement, like you said, and that scares me a little bit. But that also means that I should just keep him because he's so cheap. So I'm taking it all down with me if he has the Cancelo curse still in the team. But yeah, speaking of City, that's the final thing I want to ask with your team. Captaincy, is it just like a straight shoot? There's like Haaland against Wolves, makes sense? Or is there any other player, potentially Salah, like you said, that is someone that you could consider as a captaincy choice?
Yeah, I think I feel like it's only three players that I would consider just looking at the sort of team. Salah, Haaland, Saka,
Yep.
probably in the order of Haaland, Salah, Saka.
Yep.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I
Yep.
think that would be it. And look, there's no. I feel like there's no chance neither of those two are going to play in that regard. So I'm pretty set with Haaland captaincy, and he loves to score against Wolves.
Yeah.
In really scored for Norway as well.
Yeah. Twice. He's the top goal scorer of Norway of all time
Yeah,
now. Just
and
crazy.
also he hasn't gotten to do the baby celebration in the Prem, so let's see it happen against Wolves.
It's true. He is expecting a child. So yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward as well when it comes to captaincy. I think Wolves, they conceded 5 goals against Brentford, so you could just imagine what Man City can do, especially Man City that are sort of like, they did get the points against Fulham, but they didn't really get them convincingly either. I think they will be raring to go, and Haaland, I think, is also going to be pretty eager to score some goals as well, because yes, he did score twice in the first game for Norway against Slovenia, looked really good, scored twice. Norway looked really good. Everyone was just all of a sudden, oh, the manager should stay and they're amazing, and then they just got destroyed by Austria 5-1 afterwards, and Holland looked pretty damn bad in that game. So yeah, I think Holland will be both vengeful and he's still in good form as well. So I think it's a pretty easy captaincy choice personally as well. But yeah, standing pat, holding captaincy. When it comes to the starting thing between Foss and Konate for you, I get it. I think I'm sort of 50-50-ish there as well, but I think I would probably just back the better player in the better team, which is Konate. Yes, they do have Chelsea, but could easily be another 2-0 win for Liverpool. It just depends how that game plays out. But I get the thing with Woodfors, because you've benched him twice where he's gotten points, and you sort of want to play him now to get those points. And it is Southampton, which is a pretty poor team, so I get it. It's a very close call for me as well. But yeah, I think you could also potentially bench Van de Ven, I guess, but I probably would bench Foss out of the three players just because Leicester have been so bad defensively this season. Yeah, let's move on to Kimo and his current plans. And he did actually message us or in the group chat right before the podcast with his potential transfer plans. He was looking into potentially doing Smith Rowe to McNeil. And as someone that did that transfer last week, Smith Rowe to McNeil, how do you feel about it this week, now that Smith Rowe has finished his Man City game, where he was actually benched, which is interesting? Smith Rowe is actually someone that we should talk about more. We're going to get to him when it comes to the weekly Wildcard draft as well. But what do you reckon with Smith Rowe to McNeil potentially for Kimo? Do you think that's a viable transfer still, or do you think he's sort of like a week too late now that Smith Rowe has played City? No comments? Did you freeze? No.
It's hard to say because they're very similar players. um, I personally just think that Everton have the best sort of. It's so typical. They have the best matches, but at game week 9, when we play Fulham, he's gonna end up scoring a hat trick and be like this to me. So, I just like our fixtures, and yeah, like you said, Aston Villa at home could go either way, especially with Raul Jimenez and he's now scoring for Fulham as well.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a weird one because I think it. I understand how some people might just say it's very like for like in terms of the transfers, but man, I just really like Everton's fixtures, and McNeil is very pivotal to
Yeah.
Everton's success.
Speaking of players that are playing more like a number 10 this season, like Kulusevski, McNeil seems to be more centrally oriented this season as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about McNeil as well. If he gets blood, he's gonna explode. Essentially, it's either 2 or 15. It's not 6 or like that. It's always gonna be an explosion of like a goal assist or double goals and stuff like that. And considering the teams that we are playing, Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton, West Ham, which is going to be a tough game, but we're both going to be there in attendance, which will be fun. Brentford, and then our matches go to hell. So that's game. So 8 to 12. It's looking nice. Then you look at Smith Rowe in comparison. Like Aston Villa at home can go either way. Everton can go either way. To be honest, Brentford
at home, they just conceded 3 to Wolves.
That's true. That's true. Like it, they, like I said, with the like for like thing, they also have pretty decent-ish fixtures, and then have a cesspool of hard stuff. So have both if you can somehow. And I think he actually could if he got rid of Rodgers, right?
Yeah, he could do that. Could do Rodgers to McNeil.
Or sorry, what am I saying? Get rid of Semenyo.
Yeah, could also do that. But then you have a benching headache, I guess, this week. Who would you bench if you bring in McNeil for Semenyo?
I'd say Rodgers.
Yeah, Fulham is a pretty tough fixture.
Yeah,
that could actually be the best transfer for Kimo potentially.
Yeah,
it's actually a pretty good point. Because I like Rodgers as a value pick going forward. I think Semenyo has sort of like, I had him for game week 1 personally as well, and he was really good for me at the start of the season. But he has sort of like you mentioned, to your credit, a couple of weeks past with Evan Nilsson in the squad in the side now. Semenyo hasn't been as centrally minded as he was at the start of the season, and his numbers are sort of showing that as well now. Even though he looked really good in that game I can't remember. It was against Southampton, I think. He looked like he was the man of the match in that game and got a goal and almost got an assist in that game. So he's still a really good player, but the tough matches, I sort of get why you would sell Semenyo. And yeah, I think the Fulham away fixture is really tough for Rodgers and Watkins for that matter. So yeah, that could potentially be something to do there. Like you mentioned, I think that's actually a pretty good transfer suggestion. But when it comes to his potential transfers, I don't think anything like really moves the needle. I don't think McNeil against Ipswich away is that much better than Rodgers against Fulham away. So I'd probably just stand pat. I think that's going to be my thought process this season in general. I think if you don't feel like super confident about transfer, just save it and have those saved up transfers, because you can do so much more with the transfers now than you could in the past. I think transfers are more valuable in general this season. And I would probably advise people, if you are sort of like 50-50 whether to do a transfer or not, I would more lean towards not doing the transfer and just saving it for next week. So I think that's going to be my case for Kimo as well. In general with this team, I also had another suggested transfer potentially with, or double transfer there, with Trent down to Lewis and Vardy to Solanke. But I think with the fixtures that they have this week, I think you should just keep it, because I think Lewis has a better fixture obviously than Trent does. Solanke, Vardy, it is sort of like 50-50 in terms of the fixtures, but yeah, I'd probably wait with that for a week as well until Trent gets even tougher fixtures, and Vardy has a tougher fixture as well next week, I think. But yeah, what do you think of that potential double transfer? Do you like Trent and Vardy? Do you like Lewis and Solanke? What do you think about those players in general as well?
Man, Trent was playing very well for England as well, and he's getting back into pace. So I understand the differential aspect of him, but I think Solanke's matches can't sort of be ignored, and it
Yep.
would help him in terms of saving some cashish here and there and all this type of stuff. So, and Vardy's kind of he's been nice.
Yeah.
It hasn't been terrible or anything. It's just that it's like every other game where he's doing something. So
Yeah.
I think Solanke has the better potential and could potentially be on pens to just get him going and all this type of stuff too. So I think yeah, I think those are some viable options in terms of transfers, but it's just a question of what he wants to do about Semenyo. I think Semenyo is more of the move that he should. Yeah, because like if he moves Semenyo, it. Let me check something.
Could do Watkins to Solanke and Semenyo to Johnson. That's something I'm considering
Yeah,
with my own team as well.
yeah, because he can't do Semenyo straight up to Johnson, right? He's like lacking point
Mm,
4 or something,
yeah,
maybe.
Semenyo is 5.7, so he would get, yeah, about 6.2, which is less than what
Yeah,
Johnson is worth.
unless he goes for Kulu. No, but yeah, I think Semenyo out could bring a little bit more freedom into what he can do with the team. So, um, and there are some nice picks around. So it all depends on what he feels is more pressing. Does he want to get a decent third striker and a decent defender um, as a replacement, or does he want to address the Semenyo issue?
Yeah. Potentially Watkins to Solanke. Or what do you feel about the Aston Villa Fulham fixture in general?
I still think that Aston Villa can do the business.
Mm-hmm.
They've clearly shown, like, what, they've only lost one game and so far, and it was against Arsenal, right?
Aston Villa?
That's pretty, yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So,
And they could have easily scored many goals in that game as
oh
well.
yeah, Watkins
Watkins.
included.
Yeah.
Rogers being a point dodger because of Watkins bullshit. So, um,
They've also
and like
drawn
if
Ipswich and Man United the last two game weeks though, which is kind of concerning, seeing how bad those two teams
it,
are currently.
of course, but they also beat Bayern, so like
Yeah.
it is a bit all relative, and I think it is the thing that I suggested, which was fixture they're not used to having to play this many games and all this type of stuff. But like the Man United draw at the end of the day, I mean, it's still Man United. Like,
Yeah, Man United who
yeah.
really like tried to bunker down defensively as well. Really hard to break down because they didn't really try too much offensively.
And Ipswich, to be fair, at home have been super kamikaze. So, and Delap apparently being a thing. So,
Yeah, he
um,
was good as well.
so, so, like, I think it's a bit of a grain of salt considering the fact that it's Fulham and Bournemouth next. But going forward, yeah, it's not. It's a bit Spurs pool away, then Palace at home, which will begin, then Chelsea away again. So
Yeah,
it's yeah, it's a little bit inconsistent on walk-ins as well. Um, but I think for now, I personally would just suggest maybe getting rid of Semenyo because TA against
yeah, you
Chelsea
just hate Semenyo.
could go. It's not hating Semenyo, it's just that he's easier to move on because of Bournemouth's
Tough
difficult
fixtures, yeah.
matches.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's also
um,
benched though, so it's not something that's pressing.
can he afford Kudus?
No,
Cheeky.
Kudus is
Diff-
6.5, so I don't think.
He's
Or
$6.3.
he's gone down to 6.3. He could actually potentially get Kudus, but West Ham had the worst matches on the fixture ticker, so
They
I don't
do,
know.
but
Spurs
he's
away, Man
fun.
United at home, like the two, it's not too bad. Yeah, the next four aren't too bad in terms of scoring goals. Spurs, United, and then Forest away is tough in terms of scoring goals, and then Everton at home.
But do you
Um,
want a guy who sits on a chair as a celebration?
yes,
Yes.
sick celebration.
I know. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
So, no, but in all honesty, I think if he moves Semenyo, who will likely go down in price with everything right, like he's surely being sold by a lot of
yeah.
managers.
I'm not considering selling him that much, honestly, because
He actually
he's
went
pretty
up in
cheap.
price as well.
Yeah,
That's
he's gone
great.
up in price already.
But yeah, I mean, Arsenal, Villa, City, Brentford are not the best games.
Yeah,
But Brighton was Spurs. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I get your point, but I also don't think it's like a pressing issue, seeing as he has 11 starters are pretty good this week. So
Yeah,
probably just stand pat. But saying that, I'm probably looking at selling Watkins to Solanke myself this game week. So yeah, that could also be a potential transfer for Kimo. So yeah, plenty of options for Kimo. Just depends what he wants to do, basically. Yeah, that's pretty much him. Let's move on to the final manager, which is the manager of the week. And I think with this team, it's more about just getting Haaland because I don't really feel too confident about Saka captain potentially. Other than him, don't really see any other like standout captaincy options. And I think Haaland, like we mentioned earlier, is the standout captaincy option. So I'd probably just get rid of the Arsenal players here, Saka and Havertz, just to be able to afford Haaland. You get Rodgers potentially. I don't know if there's any other like 5.5 or below midfielders because that he doesn't have enough money to get the likes of McNeil and Smith Rowe, for example, or he has Smith Rowe already, but he doesn't have the money to get it. McNeil just about. So yeah, my suggestion is Rodgers and Haaland. Could stand pat as well, I guess, if you don't want to get Haaland, but I'd probably look into a way to get Haaland this game week. But yeah, what do you reckon with this team? 2.8 million in the bank as well, so there's a bit of wiggle room there. Jota is a player that we haven't really mentioned so far because he's like getting less and less popular in FPL, but he actually has decent playing potential and points potential whenever he plays. Especially after an international break, he doesn't have to travel as far as the likes of Luis Diaz, for example. So that should be decent for his, or Darwin Nunez for that matter. So that should be good for his playing time potentially. So yeah, what do you reckon with this team in general? He has two long-term issues with Joao Pedro and Masraoui on the bench as well that he could potentially do something about. But yeah, what do you reckon with this team?
I
Two,
think the suggested transfers there is the play. You don't want to ignore. You definitely don't want to ignore a triple captaincy sort of match like Southampton at home. So,
next
like,
week, yeah.
I think, yeah. So I think Wolves away, easy enough match where you can easily get a brace. Southampton at home, that's a triple captaincy candidate. Bournemouth away, can go either way. Brighton away, like
Yeah, we saw Brighton against Chelsea. That was feasting time for Palmer, so that could also be a good
yeah,
fixture.
yeah. So Spurs, Liverpool, of course, that's where things become a bit iffy. But then it's like Nottingham Forest, Palace, and like yeah, I just I just like having Haaland to him.
Yeah.
So I feel like you have to do it. And I understand that Bournemouth away for Saka is not the worst game, but then it's Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea. It's not ideal. But then it becomes good again for a little bit. But I think if you want to look short term, just go Holland.
Yeah.
He's the auto captain for a reason. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be the play here. I don't see any other way you can do it apart from selling Saka or potentially selling Palmer. But like I mentioned previously, I think Palmer is the better pick for the next like 5 game weeks when Saka has tougher fixtures, in my opinion. So yeah, I'd probably just get Haaland in. But yeah, other than that, the team is looking decent. Like if you're not getting Haaland, I think Saka is like one of the better captain's options you can get to. You can't really get Salah in this instance either, so I think Saka is probably the best captain's option out of the remaining players outside of Haaland and Salah. So yeah, if you don't want to get Haaland, then yeah, I would probably just stand pat and see what you can do with the transfers next week when you potentially need some more starting players than you do this week. The Arsenal players will get tougher fixtures eventually, but Bournemouth away is still a decent fixture. So either stand pat if you don't like the Haaland thing, or just go with Haaland because he is the best captaincy choice the next 2 game weeks, in our opinion, by quite a distance as well, I think. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Manager of the Week. Again, reminding you guys watching that if you want to be the Manager of the Week, you can join the FPL Scope Mini League with the league code hpxeri, and you can be featured on the podcast just like Colonel Atom King just was. And yeah, finally, we're going to go to the weekly Wildcard drafts that I did this week, and we've gone for an hour, 20 minutes already, so I'm not going to do too much with this. So I'm just going to give you one chance to comment on this team, like one particular thing, whether it's a player you wish was included, a player you don't really see the appeal of that is included. Just give me one comment about this team before we get into the final part of the podcast.
Why no Everton players?
Which players would you look to have?
Either someone defensively, McNeil, or even Calvert-Lewin, because I feel like just not having multiple players, but the fixtures dictate at the very least consideration. And I see that you got rid of Mikolenko because of injury, which makes sense. But like, yeah, I feel like Cunha again, decent player. I know, like you've kept 2 Wolves players when they're like losing every single game and stuff like that. Like, yes, I know he scores and Cunha's been scoring lately, but I feel like Everton's fixtures dictate at the very least to have some representation here.
Yeah, it's just long term basically. I think Wolves just have those really, really, really good fixtures from next game onwards basically. And you can just bench him this game week, so it's not really a problem when it comes to that. I did consider McNeil in midfield rather than Smith-Rowe most likely, seeing as he is the number 10 pick. Potentially Rodgers as well. You've made a case against him, but I just think Rodgers is tremendous value as he plays 90 minutes just about every game for a top 4 side last season, and he is that good as well. I'm just a huge fan of Rodgers, so I just feel really bad, or I just don't feel good about selling him in general either. But yeah, McNeil or Mikolenko would probably be the ones. Calvert-Lewin is sort of just cursed for me. I just don't really want him. Don't really have much of an interest in him, and I quite like the more expensive strikers most as well. And I think Cunha has looked really good so far. I think he's being overlooked as like a good player in general. So yeah, that's pretty much it for when it comes to no Everton players. But yeah, they were close, even though they are not even on the cusp section there. I had Guardiola, Nicholas Jackson, and Kulusevski as potential players to have, but McNeil and Mikolenko are definitely in consideration as well. If Mikolenko is fit, for sure. Could have him over Van den Berg as well to just have more security in the defense on top of that. But yeah, that's basically the explanation for no Everton players. But with that out of the way, with the whole podcast now out of the way, we come to the final part, which is the final word from Kevin, which is a tradition on this podcast. So what do you have to say, Kevin, to end this podcast?
You know what? Fuck you, Matthias, for not having a single Everton player in the weekly wildcard draft. You fucking asshole. What the hell? I hope that Everton beat the snot out of West Ham when we go to the game. It's not gonna happen. I'm gonna cry, but hey, at the very least, I'll be in good company.
Bye bye.